Hello friends! Today I am taking you guys along on this journey that I just recently have come home from to Scotland and England. Hello friends, I hope you guys are all doing well. It feels like forever since I've sat in front of a camera and talked. It might not feel that way for you guys because I had some videos pre-planned for while I was away, but I actually haven't sat down in front of a camera in like a month. So this feels so nice, and also I feel a little bit out of practice. So bear with me as I take you guys along with me on this trip that I recently went on to Scotland and England. So I was gone for just under 2 weeks. It was 12 days and we just had so much fun. Now, I was interacting with a lot of people I didn't know before this trip, and because of that, I did feel a little awkward like pulling my camera out and talking straight to camera. So this is sort of filmed a little bit like home video style, where I'm just sort of showing you around. My friend Molly filmed a couple of clips of just me. And then I also filmed a couple, like set up some shots of just me as well. And then there's just some like, you know, handheld shots. There's also quite a bit of vertical footage, so I hope you guys don't mind. I tried to do vertical and horizontal, but I definitely missed quite a few bits in horizontal. So it's probably a solid 50-50 split if I could gander a guess. And since I didn't actually talk to the camera, I thought I could just sit down. I'm gonna pull up sort of the raw footage on my laptop and then just sort of narrate, I guess, as we go along. And I also have written out just some things that I learned about myself in this process that I thought I would share with you guys. So it's not your typical travel vlog. I am sorry if that's what you guys were hoping to see. It's gonna be more like if you and I were just sitting down and having a chat amongst friends about a recent trip I went on. But that said, let's jump right on into the video. Hello friends, good morning. Today I fly out to the UK. I am pretty scared, I'm not even gonna lie. This whole thing is like very new to me, and I don't know, international travel seems really terrifying and really scary. Yeah, I have a lot of anxiety surrounding today. But I'm also really excited, and I'm trying to not like catastrophize everything, which is something I definitely know I can do. But anyway, I leave tonight at 10:45, so I'll see you guys tonight. So we took a night flight, which was actually really lovely. We were able to sleep most of the night. I got pretty lucky. I have insomnia, so I got pretty lucky that I didn't actually suffer from very much jet lag either way. Taking a night flight was really nice. We took off around 10:40 p.m. and then we landed in Glasgow around noon the next day. It worked out pretty well. We were definitely a little sleepy at night, but we stayed up. We went out to dinner with Molly's friend from university, who I think I can now call my own friend or acquaintance. She let us stay with her, and we got to meet her older sister, and we went out to dinner, the four of us, and when we came back to the house, we watched some Love is Blind, I believe, and it was just a really chill, relaxed time, and we went to bed at a normal hour around 9-10 o'clock. On the second day, which is technically the first full day that we were in Scotland, we hopped in Justine's car, which is Molly's friend from university, and we drove through the Highlands to Fort William. Basically, we drove through Glencoe and we drove through a bunch of different places throughout the Highlands, and it was so beautiful. It is otherworldly. There's just massive mountain ranges everywhere. I think had we gone just a little later, we might have seen a bit more green. Everything was still sort of just barely starting to grow, but there were daffodils everywhere, which was really surprising to me. Actually, I didn't know that they just grew wildly everywhere, or at least that was my assumption. And it was just really beautiful to see. And even though there wasn't a ton of green on the mountains through the Highlands that we drove through, it was really beautiful. Again, it felt otherworldly, these massive mountain ranges, and I just feel like video and photo don't do it justice. It's just so much grander in person than it looks through a lens, but even still, it was just so impressive. It was one of my favorite parts of the trip. We also got to see so much livestock. So once we drove through the Highlands, we stopped for the night in Fort William. Fort William is a waterfront town, and it has the beautiful massive body of water, and then just behind it is a mountain range, and again, just so stunning, something to behold truly. And it's just a really small, quaint, walking, I wouldn't even call it a city, sort of just town. And it's just basically a strip of shops and hotels that you can just sort of walk through and experience. It's a great pass-through town, I think, especially for tourists. And if you wanted to get on the Hogwarts Express, this is where you could do it. But this portion of the trip mostly just consisted of us chilling out, hanging out, going to the pub, getting some drinks and dinner, and we also popped into the Highland bookshop to look at some books, which was really lovely. Okay, friends, hello. It's the end of the first full day in Scotland, and I've barely logged a thing. But mostly we just sort of walked around, and I know tomorrow see the Hogwarts Express, so that'll be really cool. But I just left the pub. I was out with some friends and we went and got drinks. They're still back there, but I decided to head back to the hotel, so I'm currently walking into the hotel. And that's sort of just been it. We've just sort of been hanging out, exploring the town, sort of traveling to get closer to the destinations we're going to. And that's really it. So far, so good. The next day we headed up to the Glenfield Viaduct, which I've been talking about nonstop already, which was perhaps my favorite moment from the trip. It did snow that night and it was raining for most of the day, but it was so beautiful still. It was cloudy, it was a little eerie, which felt exactly correct. It gave me Dementor vibes, and I really loved that, to be honest. I'm gonna be so for real. So we went and we saw the viaduct. It was stunning. If you decide to go yourself, wear comfortable shoes because it's a bit of a walk to get up there, and if it's raining it's going to be quite slick, so wear shoes with good grip. I wore big chunky loafers and they worked out really well. Seeing the Glenfield Viaduct up in person was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my life. It's just so beautiful. It feels like an architectural marvel, and it was just every bit as magical as I had hoped it would be. We spent just a little bit of time there. We took so many pictures and videos, which is, I think, exactly what it's meant for, and we had such a lovely time. And then after we saw the viaduct, we headed across the road and up a little to this really beautiful, ancient, medieval-looking church. I don't actually know when the church was built, but it is giving medieval, spooky, grim vibes. And I loved it. It was so stunning. Molly actually really wanted to see it because it is apparently quite regularly photographed. And it is like a Pinterest sort of location, so we went over there and we looked at the church, and then we went behind the church, and lo and behold, it was the lake that Harry and Buckbeak fly over. Makes sense, they're just across the street from each other, so it was cool to get to see that location as well. And beyond that, it was just so beautiful. And again, with the mistiness and the rain and like the sort of eerie gloominess, it just was a dark academia girlie's dream, to be honest. After that, we hopped in the car and we went to lunch at a restaurant in Loch Lomond, or on Loch Lomond. Loch means lake, and so it's just a lakefront restaurant. It was, again, just views for days. Scotland is superior at serving views. There's just nowhere on the planet of Earth that I have been before that literally every single place you turn is just views. Whether you're in a city or you're more rural, like in the Highlands, everything is just so beautiful no matter where you look. So we had dinner, or I guess a late lunch. Don't remember what I got this time, but I know previously I tried venison lasagna and was scarred for the rest of my life when I learned that venison was deer. Deer are one of my favorite animals on the planet of Earth, and I did not know that's what venison was. I didn't like it. And also I was kind of traumatized by the fact that I ate it, but it's fine. It's fine, we're moving on. We're moving on. I believe it was this night that we went back to Justine's house, and then we went into the city and we went to a pub. Her boyfriend is a manager at a pub in the city, so we went and we got some drinks, and we went to two different bars. We went to her boyfriend's bar, and then we went to an Irish pub as well, so a Scottish pub and an Irish pub in the same night. We had so much fun and it was really lovely. The next day, me, Molly, Justine, and her sister Maxine headed into Edinburgh for the first day. Now, Molly and I ended up staying overnight in Edinburgh. We got a hotel and we just stayed for the 2 days that we were going to spend in the city, but Justine and Maxine were just there with us for the first day. On the first day, we took a guided tour through the city, which was really fun, and we learned a lot. We saw a lot of different places. This is sort of when we saw Edinburgh University and when we saw Greyfriars Kirkyard, but we also got to see Victoria Street, and it was really lovely. I wasn't expecting to find a graveyard that interesting. Graveyards kind of do freak me out a little, but it was actually really, really lovely, really interesting. One story that really just like made me cry, actually, like I actually was tearing up, is the story of Greyfriars Bobby, which is the story of a sweet little dog whose owner passed when Bobby was just 2 years old, and every night Bobby would go back to his owner's grave site in the kirkyard, in Greyfriars Kirkyard, to guard over his owner's remains and to be there with him. At the time, stray animals were ordered to be euthanized, and so a prominent figure in Scotland adopted Bobby and gave him a home and a collar and an address to make him legal and no longer a stray, but continued to allow him to return to the kirkyard so he can stay and rest with his former owner. And when Bobby inevitably died, he had become so beloved by the town and his owner, despite it being illegal for animals to be buried in human graveyards, he had legislation drawn up so that Bobby could be buried alongside his owner. Having just lost my sweet Gizmo, it was a little hard to hear, I'm not gonna lie, but it was also just really heartwarming. And so now people from all over the world, Bobby has a little statue in the kirkyard, and people from all over the world bring him sticks to lay at his grave, so I did that. But anyway, so we went to the kirkyard. We also went to a grass market, which is really beautiful, and it's really, really nice to go early in the morning. There's not very many people there first thing in the morning, so we were there around 8 a.m. and it was quite empty. It was very lovely. But grass market is the location where people would come to witness public executions. It is very eerie, and there's plaques everywhere, and the restaurants are themed, so definitely something to bear in mind. If grass market's not your thing, you can also check out Haymarket. The next day, Molly and I popped into a local cafe that was sort of off the beaten path. I believe it was called Quinn's Cafe. It was really lovely. We got breakfast, and I just got eggs on toast because I was afraid of haggis, and I really didn't want black pudding either. I did try haggis. It was annoyingly good. Don't think about what's in it. That's all I have to say. But it was annoyingly good. That morning we also went to Arthur's Seat, which is a dormant volcano right in Edinburgh. We hiked up, I guess you could say, the first peak, and the view from up there is stunning. It is quite cold and very windy, so if you do happen to travel to Arthur's Seat, make sure you bundle up. It is a bit of a walk as well, so again, wear comfortable shoes and shoes that have good grip. It really is something to behold though, to see the volcanic rock and then just a stunning field of yellow flowers blooming underneath it. It feels kind of like I was inside of Stranger Things almost, and it was really just so, so beautiful. Then as we were walking back into Edinburgh, well, I'll let past me tell you what happened.
Just another day in Scotland. I just got on my fur. Oh my god, that's great fun, great fun.
I'm not gonna lie, it was honestly hilarious, but I did have to go and buy a new shirt. Molly and I laughed about it for a solid 5-10 minutes, and it was funny. It was so funny that happened, and she was so kind to clean it up for me. It sort of like hit me sort of right here, and so I couldn't actually see it, but it was on my shirt and it was on my jacket, so she very kindly cleaned it up for me. They say it's good luck, so here's hoping. After that, we sort of just walked around Edinburgh a little bit and headed up toward Edinburgh Castle, which was not at all what I expected. I think when I was picturing Scottish castles, I pictured fairy tales, but instead they're more militaristic, which is still really cool to see. It's just not the fairy tale castles I had envisioned in my mind. So Edinburgh Castle does cost money to enter. I think actually Stirling Castle does as well, but we didn't actually go into Stirling Castle, but you do need to buy tickets for all of them. But we got our tickets online. I do recommend doing that. Schedule that ahead of time. We got lucky because we were there sort of an off season, and it was the middle of the week, so we were able to just go ahead and book our tickets. But I would recommend booking ahead. I talked to my friend Emma, who's from Ireland, who we randomly bumped into. She messaged me on Instagram. She's like, hey, I saw you're in Scotland. I'm gonna be in Edinburgh this weekend. And I was like, shut up. I'm on the train to Edinburgh right now. Let's meet up. So we actually got dinner the first night together, and then she came with us to the castle and we explored it all together, the three of us. And Emma had said, if you do plan to go to the castle in the on season or peak season, to schedule it ahead. Otherwise it's going to be quite difficult to get a ticket to go in. But we went in, we witnessed a wedding, which was so cool. There were people getting married inside of the castle. But once you go through sort of the castle wall, It's a giant village inside, or I guess it's a small village, but giant in castle terms. We also got to see crown jewels, and we got to see a coronation scepter and the Stone of Destiny, which is about to actually head back to England. It sort of flip-flops between the two countries, so it'll go back to England, to Westminster Abbey for King Charles's coronation coming up here on May 6th. So it was really cool to get to see those things. And there's just so much history to learn. And yeah, it was just cool to be able to go inside and see the incredible structures and the grand hall, which was actually quite small, and all of the different things, all the things. So I definitely recommend it. I think especially if you're a history buff, it's definitely worth it. Also, there's a liquor store inside, and I know I'm talking a lot about alcohol right now, but they were giving away free samples of like a caramel whiskey, and it was divine. And also the man who gave out the whiskey is an artist. He makes what he says are sad songs, and I followed him on Instagram. I'll leave his account up here if you guys want to check him out. His music is actually pretty good, and he's kind of funny, so if you guys want to check him out, he was very, very nice. So I'll leave his handle up here. After we saw the castle, I think we mostly just stopped, took some pretty pictures. There's this really lovely like wisteria wall that kind of looks like Rapunzel. It's like all these purple and cascading flowers that look like they're coming down from the castle. So we stopped, and there's a lovely chair you can sit in. We took some pictures there, and then we headed back to our hotel, picked up our luggage, and we're off to the train station to go back to Justine's house. While we were walking to the train station, we saw the most beautiful, almost triple rainbow. It was like a rainbow, and then it started to start over underneath it, but then just above it, there was a really slight rainbow as well going over the city. It was so stunning, and I felt like it was just such a lucky... See, maybe there was my luck. I got pooped on by a bird, and then we got to see a rainbow. So that was really lovely. It was just such a magical moment as we were leaving Edinburgh for the trip. The next day, we hopped back on the train and we headed to Stirling. We used a lot of train transportation when we were in Scotland, and it was really, really comfortable, really, really clean, really convenient, and quite enjoyable. So I definitely recommend using the train system when you're in Scotland if you need to get around. When we were in Stirling, we popped into some of Molly's local haunts from when she went to university in Stirling. She got her master's degree there. So we went to the Berg coffee shop where I got the most delicious and refreshing hummus and tomato bagel. I was like, this is divine. It was so good. And I also had the spring special, which was a salted caramel cappuccino. I had more cappuccinos on this trip than I've had in my whole life, and I don't regret it. It was worth it. We also stopped into another coffee shop later on called, I think, Sterling Coffee, and we brought our coffees. I actually got a coffee and Molly got a tea, and we headed to Kings Park, which is a really lovely expanse of land where there are walking paths and daffodils and soccer or football fields, if you will, and it's just a nice place to go and hang out. We grabbed our coffees, went for a little bit of a walk, and then we just sat down on some benches and hung out. It was so, so lovely, and it was a really nice change of pace after walking over 30 miles in Edinburgh. We walked nearly 15 miles each day we were there, so it was great to just sort of chill for a minute and take a beat. Hello friends, I haven't really been updating you. Molly and I today arrived in Stirling, where Molly went to grad school, and it is the most picturesque little town. And I know she's feeling so at home. So at home. I'm happy. It's so good. So we're just going for a little brisk walk with our coffee and tea in hand. Look at all these daffodils. They're just wild. They grow everywhere. It's the craziest thing to me. It's also the most beautiful day so far since we've been here. It's sunny, knock on wood. It's also warm enough to not have to wear a jacket, which is so good. Yeah, we're just having such a great time. I think it's quite nice to just be the two of us, I think, right now. Yeah. So we've been hanging out with like friends who are sort of local since we've been here, which is also been so lovely, but quite nice. Quite nice to just hang out. So yeah, we're gonna keep on walking, and we'll see you guys later. The next day we were off to Stirling Castle. Now this was the day I had wanted to take some princessy pictures. Unfortunately, I did not try my dress on beforehand and it didn't fit. So the pictures didn't turn out quite how I'd hoped they would, but it was the thought that counts. We tried it. So this day we went to the Stirling Castle, where I found out my family is related to William Wallace. Can you say Braveheart? As soon as I found out, I already knew my family's from the Crawford clan, and so I started digging around and seeing what I could find for my dad, because it's on my dad's side, and I found so many cool things. So that was so cool, and my dad's new personality is Braveheart. He's been watching it ever since I called him to tell him. And I think it'd be so cool to go back with my dad just so that he can see all of the things. But like I said, on this day we went to Stirling Castle. We also stopped by the old jail, and then we saw some beautiful churches and architecture. And we finished up the round of touristy sites by visiting the old stone bridge in Stirling, which is where like the big battle of Stirling happened. That night I actually ended up not feeling well. I started to just feel really run down. Again, I'm quite introverted, and I'd been spending all of my time with people, and I think I was just feeling really tired. I brought the wrong shoes. This day I only had my loafers, and we did so much walking on the second day in Stirling, and so I didn't have the right shoes. My feet hurt. I didn't feel well. I had a bit of a headache, and I just decided to stay in. But Molly was actually meeting up with a friend of hers who she also went to grad school with. So she went out and met up with her friend, and I actually just ran over to the Berg for dinner and grabbed another hummus and tomato bagel, and then I came back to our hotel that had a restaurant and bar and got a sticky toffee pudding and a Jack and Coke, which was very nice. The next morning was our last day in Stirling, and on this day we were going to visit Stirling University, or the University of Stirling, which is where Molly went to graduate school. And we were also going to hike up to and walk up the nearly 250 steps of the Wallace Monument. So I didn't really film anything of the actual university because we were just sort of hanging out, and I was just spending time with Molly and just seeing a place that was just so formative to her, and I really just wanted to be present in the moment. But then we walked over to the Wallace Monument. It was actually quite a long walk, so I think we took a roundabout way based on bad instructions from somebody who was trying to help us get there. So we ended up taking a sort of roundabout way to get there, and then we had to hike up a mountain, and then from up the mountain you then had to walk the nearly 250 steps up the tiniest sliver of a spiral staircase to get all the way to the top. And it was a bit difficult. I think if you're claustrophobic, it's not maybe the best environment for you, so maybe sit this one out. The staircases are so close that only two small children can pass each other, or an adult has to press their entire body against the wall so another one can pass, which is what I had to do a couple of times. Luckily there are platforms that you can step off into, and there's these little observation rooms with different exhibits and things in them, so we were able to take little breaks and get out of people's way on each of those platforms. I believe that there's 3, and then you have the final upper landing, which is so stunning. The incredibly crafted arches, the 360-degree views. It was so beautiful, and also really interesting that the stone used to create the monument was all sourced from the ground in which it is built. So it's really interesting to see, and again, it was really cool for me because at this point I already knew I was related to William Wallace, so it was cool to be able to see a replica of his sword and to just sort of see this monument built to him is a lot of fun. After that, we headed back to Justine's house to pick up the rest of our luggage because we kept some of our bigger bags at her house while we were traveling to other cities, and she and her mother very kindly dropped us off at a hotel in Glasgow. Now, we only really had one day in Glasgow, and it was fine. It's not my favorite city that we went to. It kind of just felt like any other city. There's a lot of construction, and it was just kind of meh. But I did like the square that we hung out in, like the main square of the city was really fun. I love buskers, and so it was so lovely. There was a busker who was playing his guitar and singing. He was incredibly talented, so we got to just hang out in the square. Popped into the Modern Art Museum, which was interesting. art museum girly. I thought I liked modern art. I'm not sure I like it that much anymore. There were a few exhibits that I was like, yes, I really, really love this. Like there was an exhibit on equal pay and equal rights for women, and I was like, heck yeah. But then there were some that I was like, I don't get it. I don't know. So some of it I didn't really love, some of it I did. It's definitely my least favorite museum I've ever been in, though to be fair, I've been in a lot of museums. They're a great free attraction. We did go to a little Italian restaurant that had the coolest ceiling on the planet of Earth. The whole ceiling from one end to the other was just covered in fake flowers, and it was so beautiful. And they also had some designated sort of Instagram photo moments, which I thought was so lovely since it is a major city in Scotland. I got a pepper bruschetta, and I also got a margarita pizza, but it was like not a margarita pizza, it was just a plain cheese pizza. So I was a little confused by that. Molly and I both were. We both got margarita pizza, and I was like, this is not what I thought this was gonna be. But it was still a decent pizza. It was not bad, couldn't complain. And then actually I ended up meeting a really sweet Italian man on our way to London. And he actually told me that Glasgow has some of the best pizza that he's ever had. So we definitely needed to have gone to a different restaurant, I think. Next time we're gonna do more research. For the most part in Glasgow, we just wanted to keep it easy, keep it simple. We were tired and we knew we had a lot of travel coming up in the next few days. So we really were just there to get lunch and to just chill. So we spent a lot of time in the square and it was so lovely. And that was it for Scotland. After that, we hopped on an EasyJet plane and we flew to London. Now, London was a bit stressful when we first got there, I'm not gonna lie. I was quite anxious about figuring everything out. I had thought I booked our hotel in Zone 2, which is like, basically they say if you travel to London, the best two places for foreigners to stay are Zones 1 and 2. They're, 1, the safest areas, and 2, they're the closest to the like main attractions. Well, I accidentally booked our hotel in Zone 4. It was fine. It worked out totally fine. We were actually right next to Wembley Stadium in a really, really lovely area, and I felt very safe and like totally fine being there. It was just far. It was a lot of tube riding, and it just took us a little bit longer to commute in and out of the main city center, but it was not that big of a deal. But getting there was quite stressful. It was a lot of hopping from one bus to the other, trying to figure out what bus to get on, trying to figure out then what tubes to get on. And eventually my friend Josh, so lovely, sent me the tube directions essentially, and it was like, get on this platform, get on this platform, get on this platform. I was like, great, perfect, wonderful, thank you so much for doing this. It was really, really helpful. And so we ended up eventually getting there, and we met up with my friend Josh. He was a phenomenal tour guide. He showed us around as many places as he could in a very limited amount of time that we were there. So of course, when we first arrived, we looked up and we saw Big Ben and the London Eye and Westminster Abbey and all of the main things that are just there when you first walk out from the tube station. Big Ben took my breath away. And I think if I had more time in London, I would have been like more overwhelmed with excitement. I think I was just like so stressed from getting there that I was feeling like a bit overwhelmed, but also a bit underwhelmed by the city, if that makes sense. Big Ben, though, did not disappoint. It was stunning. I could have stared at it for hours. It's also way taller than I expected. That day we also saw a couple of other historical structures like the Tower London Bridge, the Tower London. We saw where Anne Boleyn used to live, like her old apartment. We went to this place called Stoke House. I played it simple and safe. I got a Caesar salad and we just kind of chilled and hung out and had dinner. And then we went off to see Wicked on the West End, and I was so excited. I wanted to see Wicked ever since I was in middle school, so getting to see it was such a big moment. I was so grateful to Josh for suggesting that we go and see a show. We were in the absolute back row, the nosebleeds. Still wonderful. There's really no bad seat. Still lovely, still wonderful. You can see everything, but not in like the crispest of details, but you can still see everything. You can still hear everything perfectly well. I will say there were a couple moments that were like really, really loud and I had to cover my ears, but I do have really sensitive ears, so that might be something to note. If you have kiddos, maybe like get the little earphone things that they can wear at like concerts and things. Might be a good idea if you decide to take a kid with you to a West End or Broadway show. The next day I started off with a couple of hours to myself, which was so lovely. I loved getting to have that chance, and I think Molly really enjoyed it too. She got a couple of hours to sleep in. I got a couple of hours to run out. Good morning, friends. It is Friday? Thursday. It's Thursday. It's our last day here. I ripped my tights this morning, so I didn't actually have anything to wear today. So I'm just wearing my jeans from yesterday. I'm wearing a tank top, but it's not gonna work because it is quite cold. So there's actually an outlet center just up from our hotel. So I'm gonna pop in there to see if I can find a zip up like hoodie or a crew neck or something. But yeah, it's about 10 o'clock. Molly's back at the hotel getting ready. And we're gonna meet up with Josh and spend the day with him again. So that's the plan. So I ended up buying this sweatshirt from the luxury outlets that were near our hotel. And it worked out fine because I actually really love this sweater and it's like super cozy. After I stopped at the outlet, Molly and I planned to meet up at Starbucks, but on the way I stopped in at the world's oldest Cornish bakery and I got a pastry. Unfortunately, I learned I don't like really goaty goat cheese, so this was spinach and feta, two things I like together ordinarily, but the cheese was just like super goaty and it was not my favorite feta. So I ended up not really enjoying it that much, and I ended up actually going to Starbucks and getting an almond croissant, which was fine. It was really fine, but I was still excited to have been able to try it, and I was like proud of myself for sort of trying new things and branching out. And then we actually ended up going to a local coffee shop to get some coffee for Molly and headed back into the city center, which is about 30 minutes via tube. So this day was really about seeing as many things as we could. So we saw Buckingham Palace and the gardens around it. Then we went to the most magical place on earth, Harrods. Harrods is like a luxury department store that basically has all of the clothing on display as if you're in a clothing and accessories museum. I was alive. I have never been more excited to be anywhere, actually. Like, not to be dramatic, but it was mind-blowing, beautiful, just to be able to bear witness to so much beautifully handcrafted fashion items and the shoes. And we went into the Manolo Blahnik store and I was gawking. And in another life I might have bought myself a pair of Manolo Blahniks while we were there, but I did not. I did end up buying a bag at the airport Harrods because there's a smaller version of Harrods in the airport, so I bought this cute little bag. It's so adorable. I didn't buy anything at the big old main Harrods, but it was so beautiful, so stunning. I felt like a kid in a candy store. It was so magical. And then we went downstairs and there's like a whole confections and chocolatier section, and they had Lauderay macarons. So naturally I bought a pack. So basically there's a huge case and you can pick out all of them. So I had my friends pick out, I think we got a pack of 8, so everybody picked out 2 flavors and then we just had like a couple of extra. They were perfection. They were the best macarons I've ever had. I make my own macarons and I fancy myself a skilled baker. Best macarons I've ever had. After that we went to Kensington Palace and the Kensington Gardens, which was really lovely, and just sort of hung out there for a little bit. And then it started to get dark and cloudy and cold and rain was about to roll on in.
So we went out to dinner at this French restaurant called Cote, and then from there we called it a night.
Molly and I went back to our hotel for the night, and then in the morning we hopped in a cab to the airport, and that, my friends, was our trip. Not to be dramatic, but this trip was literally every bit as transformative and informative and growing as they say travel is supposed to be. As somebody who had, up until this trip, never traveled internationally before, or let alone traveled for this length of time, or without my family in any capacity like this, I didn't know what to expect going into it, but it really was every bit as transformative as I thought and hoped and dreamed it would be. I did write a little bit down about sort of my experience. I wrote this initially not with the intention of ever sharing it. It's sort of just my thoughts, my feelings and things, but we're friends, we're buds, so I thought I could share this with you. So, to sum up this experience is sort of an ode to travel. All of my life I dreamed of seeing the far-off places of my imagination, the mountain ranges of myth, the valleys of emerald green, the castles of history. But I grew up without the luxury of travel, in a family that worked tirelessly only to just make ends meet. But now, at 27 years old, I was finally given the chance to see the places only my imagination had had the chance to wander. But I was scared. Really, really scared. Scared to leave home, scared to get up on a plane, scared to stay with people I'd never met before, to travel for 2 weeks, to try new food. I was scared to leave my family and my home, and for the places I saw not to live up to the hype. I was scared I didn't deserve this chance, that I'd wake up and it would evolve in a dream, a gentle, magical, wonderful dream, but still only a dream. But I did it. I left home with my heart in hand, ready to give it to this new adventure. I woke up and was literally floating on cloud 9. This trip brought me to Scotland and England, but it also brought me courage, confidence, clarity, and a renewed sense of wonder. And that's not to say it was all easy. There were certainly challenges. I missed home and my creatured comforts. I missed quiet time spent alone. I was cooking my own meals. I missed toilets that always flushed. I missed the warm Virginia spring, but mostly I missed my family. And even with all that, I felt alive. Like I'd finally allowed myself to live the life I'd always dreamed for myself. Like I finally thought I was worthy of joy and adventure. I'd adamantly decided not to approach the world through a lens of fear, but instead through one of wonder, and with a lust for adventure and new experiences. And while home will always be home, I'm already excited for my next adventure. I've finally opened the oyster, and I'm ready to look for the oh so coveted pearl. So here is to our next adventure.